For nearly 2 decades, Traci Morrow has built a multi-million-dollar international business in the health and wellness industry, inspiring and leading her team to improve their health and grow their wealth. In addition to her business success, Traci has been married for more than 31 years, is the mom of 6 amazing kids, and is also a grandmother. Traci is a speaker, trainer, and professional coach, and she recently published her first book, Real Life Marriage: Navigating Your Beautiful, Messy, One-of-a-Kind Love Story. She is an amazing woman who epitomizes my own philosophy of life excellence. And one of the things that I really admire about Traci is her strong desire to not only create success in every area of her own life, but to also help others do the same. Traci is joining us today from the beautiful island of Kauai in Hawaii, and I'm thrilled to have her on the show. Welcome, Traci, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
It's wonderful to see you, as always. Traci, let's jump right in and start out talking about health and fitness and your career over the last 20 years. Like many of us have done, you were watching a fitness infomercial on television years ago, and you bought this product, which was produced by a company called Beachbody, and that purchase would take you on a life-changing journey. Tell us about that time in your life, where you were, and what caused you to dial that 800 number and begin what would become not only an amazing fitness transformation, but an incredible life transformation as well.
Wow, that is just it in a nutshell, how sometimes we can make one decision that seemingly takes your life on a completely different path that you didn't even see coming. And that's just how it happened for us. We had, at the time, my husband Casey and I had 4 kids. We had 4 children in 5 years. And so life was busy and full. And with my 4th pregnancy, I had gestational diabetes. And the doctor said to me, you need to lose your pregnancy weight. But then if you even, on your small frame, I'm 5'3", he said, on your small frame, if you even go 15 pounds overweight, then that will send you into type 2 diabetes because you've had gestational diabetes. And so back then I was, life was crazy busy with all those kids, and losing that weight, I was intentional to do that. And I was a runner. I played in a couple different adult soccer leagues. I wasn't any good, I jokingly say. I just loved it because it was fun and being a part of a team. And my husband and I played on a co-ed league. And so when baby number 4, my daughter got to be about 4, my metabolism just stopped working the way it had always worked. And I put on about 15 pounds really quickly without changing any of my habits. Like everything was the same, but my body wasn't working the same. And so I was really struggling because I had never had a weight issue before. It's not that I hadn't gained weight before. I just knew how to manage it. And so nothing was working. And so I can just remember praying like, oh God, either give me a solution or help me to feel comfortable in this new version of myself. And it wasn't just a couple days later that I had the clicker in my hand on a Sunday afternoon. I can still remember it was a Sunday afternoon and I was clicking through and stopped on a commercial with Tony Horton's face, the creator of Power 90 at the time. It was before P90X was created. And he said, God did not create you to have a big butt or thick thighs or, a full neck. And it was like, I just paused at the TV because how ironic that I was just landing on those very words. And I was drawn in by the before and after pictures, and later learned that Beachbody, the company, had a policy that you could not retouch their before and after pictures. And there was written all over the screen, unretouched pictures. But these were women and men, I loved the fact that you could still see stretch marks on the moms. They were real pictures, real human beings, but their lives and bodies were changed by just working out in their home, which I love that idea. I tried working out in the gym. I taught classes in a gym before I had kids, and it just wasn't realistic for that season of my life. And so I liked the idea of working out at home where I could fit it into my mom's schedule without leaving home. But at the time it was $70, and we were a one income family at that time. And I can remember saying to Casey, okay, this is $70 out of our budget. Let's just do it to the letter. This company has a money back policy. And so we did it to the letter, and it changed our bodies in a way that I thought was only like a genetic thing. I didn't know that. Little did I know. It's funny because I even taught in a gym, but I didn't know you could change your body composition in the way that you could just in your house with little hand weights. And so it lit a fire in me because I wanted to help other people find what I'd found, that it was really as simple as just 40 minutes a day in your house. And so I went online. It was very new because I'd bought it off the television, but on the back, I was looking in Target, I was looking in Costco. I couldn't find something else from this guy, this Tony guy. And so I went on the back of the VHS tape, no DVDs yet, and it said beachbody.com. And it was an online, a .com company, and that was still really new. And so I went on their website and it said, submit your before and afters and you can win our contest and come and film our next commercial. And so we thought, what the heck? So we submitted, we won, hadn't won anything like that before. And so they flew us out to Kauai and filmed the commercial. That's where I met our CEO, Carl Deichler, and Tony Horton. And we figured out that we lived about 35 miles from each other in LA. And that's about 2-hour drive in LA traffic. And we just started working together. We hit it off and we started, it started this whole snowball effect of that when they needed a fitness model, they would start to use me because I lived close. And Tony and I started hosting fitness camps around the world, around the country. And then our CEO was going to start a network marketing company branch of the company. And so they asked me to be a founder, and it just kept snowballing in the right direction.
That's amazing. What a great story. And I'm actually a huge fan of Beachbody. You probably don't know that about me, but it's been a while since I've done any of the programs, but I've done P90X more than once, and also Insanity, which, by the way, is the perfect name for that program.
Yes, it is.
And for me, those products, like for you, had a huge impact on my fitness level. And I would do the same thing. I'd move furniture around in a particular room to be able to do it, because there was just one room in the house where we had a DVD player, which is when I plugged into it. And it's just amazing the transformation that can occur, like you said, just in a small space within your house. And so obviously they've figured out the science and the physiology and the fitness part of it. And if people work it, it really does, really has a huge positive effect on their fitness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not just your fitness, but it's your mindset about fitness. It's your mindset about food. Because once you start to feel your body change, you have more energy. First, you're tired because you're making your body do something consistently that wears you down a little bit. But I always say it takes energy to make energy. And so you start to, they say it takes money to make money. It takes energy to create energy. And so when you stay with it, as all things, consistency is queen or king. And so it starts to generate this energy inside, and then you want to keep feeling better. And so then, what started out for me was an aesthetic thing, like I don't want to have this extra weight on me, turned into this, I feel so good. It changed from how I look to how I feel, and then wanting other people to have that feeling too. And then it turned into, what am I eating? And what do I need to supplement, because my food doesn't have necessarily all the things that my body is craving now and needing, because I'm acting like an athlete. And so it just kept spurring on the next level of interest for me. And once you find something that is, like you said, something anybody can do, it's all these years later. It's 19 years later. That was 19 years ago that I was clicking through those channels. And all these years later, I still, we went from VHS tapes to DVD players to now we're an online company where you can just stream it wherever you are. I still am doing those workouts here in this space. I call it up on my phone or my laptop, and I'm doing it. I still clear away the furniture and I'm doing it here, or I just bring my phone up to the hotel gym and I do it in the gym. So no matter where I go, I have no excuses to not have that feeling of how it feels good to take care of your body wherever I am and no excuses. And it's wonderful to be able to give that gift, or at least offer that gift to someone if they are interested in having that too. That I'm very passionate about that. I don't think necessarily that fitness is like Tony Horton and I. He's a very dear friend now. We've worked together for many years, the creator of P90X and so many other programs. But I don't have the same passion for fitness that Tony does, that I want to be a trainer. I've been a trainer before, but I don't want that to be me. But what I find is that being healthy and fit enhances every other relationship and aspect of my life. And so no matter what you love to do, doing it in a healthy body just makes it all the better. The experience, every aspect of the experience is better. Every relationship is better, whether that's me as a wife, as a daughter, as a mom, and now as a grandma. I have more energy and enthusiasm and excitement I bring more of my best self to those relationships because I'm in a healthy body. And what better gift can you offer to someone? That's my passion.
Absolutely. And that shines through. I think anybody who's watched the first couple minutes of this podcast or is watching the show on YouTube can see that passion come through. And that's one of the things that I love about you, Traci. Traci, fitness products aren't new. And so you've been in the industry for 20 years. And 20 years ago, they weren't new either. But it does seem like the industry goes through seasons of change. And I know new equipment and new programs come and go over time. What has remained constant for you in the area of fitness during your career with Beachbody? And how has the fitness industry evolved over the last couple decades?
Well, I would say the thing that has remained consistent really doesn't have to do with the fitness part at all, because this is what I say. I love Beachbody programs and products. I love this company. I love the heart of our CEO, Carl Deichler. But the reality is, if you're going to do something, as long as it's, as you said, scientifically that you are safe and you're doing things that aren't going to injure you because you aren't doing them improperly or unsafely. If you do anything for a long period of time consistently, you're going to have results, whether it's Beachbody or anything. What I love about Beachbody or what I'm finding about the health industry is you always do better if you have a buddy. You always do better if you have an accountability. People who go it alone, now I could go it alone because I'm just kind of that kind of person where I have it now. By now I have it hardwired in my head that like you just do it because it's just a part of who I am. But it took me a while to get to that point where it was just, I just do it. So how did I get there is the extra accountability of telling somebody else, hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to do this with me? And then having someone encourage you. That really, to me, what I find is people succeed better when they're doing something with someone, doing something hard with someone that they care about. And I think that really is, I think that's why running groups do so well, or anytime where you're doing something where you're training with a group, with your friend, and you try and make something that's maybe you don't care about as much or have as much fun doing. For me, it's more fun because I'm with somebody. And so helping people to find a group of people to do that thing, that hard thing with, I think people are realizing that people are more apt to stay with it when they are doing it with others. And what was your other question? I'm trying to remember. The other question.
Okay. Just how things have changed and how they've stayed the same.
Well, I think the other thing is, I think we always keep coming up with, there's always new gizmos and gadgets, but the reality is, I just keep coming back to that original program with that Tony did, Power 90. You can have all sorts of new things and that you are holding or working your muscles in a different way. But the reality is good old fashioned push-ups and sit-ups and squats and lifting some weights and working, having dumbbells and having circuit training. No matter how creative people get, there are just some basic things that when you are working your muscle groups, you don't really need all those gadgets. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. I think there are a lot of people who feel like it has to have a gadget or something expensive to work. And that's the beauty that I feel like more and more people are coming back to. You get this elaborate thing with all these gizmos, and then you come back to, oh, I just really, if I can do push-ups and crunches and squats and using my body weight, I can get super fit and toned. And then that it really does have to do with what you're putting into your body, because you can't outwork a bad diet.
Yes. Well, and the gizmos and gadgets become an excuse too, don't they? So
Yeah.
if we can say, well, I can't afford a gym membership,
That's
or
right.
I can't afford a set of weights, or I can't afford the abdominizer, or whatever the latest gizmo or gadget is. And the reality is there's so much that can be done with just body weight. One of my favorite exercises is to put on my running shoes and walk out the door and start running. And that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
cost anything. I mean,
Right.
I've invested in running shoes, obviously, and some clothes, but you can wear anything. And you've seen people wearing all kinds of things that don't really look like running attire, and probably don't have Saucony shoes or whatever the expensive shoes are, but they're out there exercising. And so, like you said, just a push up or a body weight squat, or having a chair, like the things that you can do with a chair, right, are just
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we let that get in the way, and it becomes a convenient excuse, I think.
Yeah, or time. Like, it doesn't need to be a whole hour. It doesn't need to be, like you said with the weights, you can fill up water bottles. You can, like, one of the things that I did is I picked up my grandson, who was, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and he was just, he's just a huge tank of a kid, and he was my weight. And so I made a whole workout holding my grandson. Like, what are the things that I can do where I am accessing, making sure that I'm safe, but doing squats and lunges. And he thought it was fun, and he was giggling, and he was loving the closeness of me holding him. But also, I mean, I was so sore and beat by the end of that workout. I mean, you can do things with your kids, with the things that you have, and take care of your body and make it as fun and creative as you want it to be. And in the end, I just keep coming back to, it's how it makes you feel. Our bodies are designed so incredibly, and they're made to move. They're made to have this movement, and we've gotten so many modern conveniences that I think sometimes that it creates a laziness, and devices and things that can create a laziness. But what I love about our programs that they are on devices is that it also creates this ability to be healthy and fit no matter where you are, because you're bringing your gym with you wherever you go. And oh man, it's exciting.
Yes, it is. Traci, we've known each other for about 5 years, I think, and I know
Yep.
you're incredibly passionate about not only wanting to lead a healthy, fulfilling life yourself, but also to teach others to do the same. One of my great frustrations is that living in a time and place that we do, we know more than ever about the importance of health and fitness, and we've talked about that already, and yet childhood and adolescent obesity have reached epidemic levels in the U.S., and adults really aren't doing that much better. Share your thoughts around that, and what should we be doing as a society to create a world that's healthy and fit, rather than one where half of premature deaths are really preventable through healthy lifestyle choices. And I know it's not all about fitness, it's about health too. So maybe talk about both of those.
Gosh, it's a big issue, but there are some immediate things that people listening or watching can immediately start to think about implementing into their home. I like to say that health begins in the home. And so it's very easy to look outside and say, gosh, we've got this huge problem, but what can I be a part of doing today in my home, in my family? And because how we change the world, as we know, because we both love John Maxwell, what does John talk about is it's very easy to get overwhelmed and say, how do we change the world? But how do I change my world? And how I can change my world is, how do I take care of myself, and how do I take care of my family? And I think that as a mom of six, I understand the craziness and busyness of working parents and parents who are running a bunch of different directions, both with work, their kids' activities, sports, homework, so many things. And so really paring down and really looking at the priorities that we have in our life and our family, and maybe eliminating some things, some time wasters, maybe some scrolling and time spent on devices, both parents and kids. It all has to start with us. So we as parents have to lead by example. I think a lot of times parents have a hard time asking their kids not to do something because they know, well, I do it too, or my spouse does it too. So how can we ask the kids not to do it? And so it perpetuates a behavior or a pattern of behavior because we know it's not right, but it's hard for us to ask the kids because we haven't taken back the reins ourselves. So looking at what are some time wasters that I do that maybe is being a bad example to my kids that I know I need to stop, but day after day after day, I just keep letting the day roll into the next day and I'm not stopping it. So what are some things that I know that I can stop? And those would be time wasters, maybe scrolling on the TV, leaving the TV on when it doesn't need to be on, picking up your phone mindlessly when you're in the car, when you are waiting for something, when you are in the house and nothing's really going on and just mindlessly scrolling, determining that you're going to stop those behaviors. When you do that, let me just tell you, I did a fast from devices 1 week. And it was this huge lesson to me of how many times I automatically just go for it, grab my phone, and I've fallen into the trap myself. So I'm not saying this from a place of like, you shouldn't do this. I'm saying I get it. I've done it. I do it too. And I have to continually redirect my brain. It's a part of our culture and part of what we do. We just open up our laptop. We sit on the couch, we open up our laptop, or we have our phone in our hand at all times. So learning to have a dock. We've opened up a phone dock in our house where they come and they plug in their phones and they leave them there past 10 o'clock. That's one thing. Phones don't go in the bathrooms. Phones don't go into their bedrooms for our teenagers. At nighttime, they dock their phones in our bedroom. And so that helps them with their sleep patterns because very easily they can kill 6 hours into the night and parents don't even know it, that they're killing time on their phones. And what kind of trouble are kids getting into at night? So that's a whole nother topic. But teaching like phone habits that are healthy because they're going to take that into their adulthood and we can teach them young. So once you decide that, then you can start looking at what are some things that we can do as a family that are healthy things that will lead them into their next part of their life as they step into adulthood. Well, learning how to maybe looking up some healthy recipes where you can start to have meals together. Maybe you can start with one meal a week and maybe build up to as many as you can. I realize that's hard with sports seasons, but starting to prepare food so they're learning how to prepare foods. Maybe you don't know how to prepare food. I get that too. Maybe your mom or dad, they both were out of the home, or you had one parent only and there was a lot of fast food or takeout food because of necessity. And maybe we can break that cycle in our home and bring back a family dinner time, and starting with one night a week or a few, where you start to learn recipes and you can pass that on to the next generation, where they learn what a healthy plate looks like, with a big green leafy salad and another vegetable and a whole grain and a protein source on their plate. And then you sit down and have dinner conversation where there's not a device at the table, a phone at the table. And just that alone is something. And then maybe having an after dinner family walk, or you do things that you start bringing activity into the home. I like to say I wanted my kids to catch me reading and catching me doing the things I wanted them to do, because people learn far more from what they see us do than what they hear us saying to do. And then if the two are in alignment, it's all the more of a powerful lesson. So I wanted my kids to find me up early in the morning working out in the living room or in the garage. We transformed our garage eventually into a gym. And so, I wanted them to find me in the early morning when they woke up in the morning, to find me at the kitchen table reading and underlining, so that they understood, when I'm an adult, I will exercise. When I'm an adult, I will get up and I will read to continue my growth. I didn't have to say a word, but they saw me. And when they got up, it wasn't like, Mom, can I have this? They knew to come and they could quietly get a book of their own and sit next to me, that it was Mom's quiet time, and they could enter into quiet time too and color with me or look at a book themselves. So then they start the habit with them. So little things that you can do to model it for your kids, start it with yourself, and put it into the family culture of what you're doing. And it's incredible to me how you start to see your kids start to emulate what you do when they catch you doing it.
Yeah, they definitely model our behavior, don't they, rather than the things that we tell them to do.
Yes, they do. Good for
Yes,
better and for worse, I'm sorry to say. And I've shown
absolutely.
both, trust me.
We, we all have. I mentioned in your introduction that you epitomize life excellence, and I really believe that. You've clearly decided to live in relentless pursuit of excellence in every area of life. Traci, where did that desire come from? And tell us how that plays out in your life. You've actually spoken to that a little bit. And
Yeah, I believe agreements we make with ourselves, both positive and negatively, are really powerful. And when I was 22, so I became a person. I was raised in a home where I was taken to church, but I became a person of faith when I was 17. And when I was 22, I made an agreement with myself that I think has served me well. And that was, I made the agreement that no matter how hard it was for me, as best I could, if I could make a choice that I wasn't going, if I was faced with a choice, I would try to make the choice that I wouldn't regret. I was going to try to live with as few to no regrets as possible, as much as I could, as far as choices, direct choices. I have regrets. Trust me. There are things that I did. I've apologized to my adult kids for. I just didn't know. I did the best I could with what I had, and it wasn't great. And we talk it through now as adults. But there are many times where I was tired, but I know I needed to follow through on disciplining a child when they were, would have been easier to just let them mouth off and walk down the hall rather than go and have the hard conversation with them and continually follow through. Or when I was tired and it mostly was all about being tired as a mom of 6, but many times when I was tired where they would want to, have this heart to heart conversation. And I'm just so tired. All I was planning was to go take off my makeup and crawl in my bed. But stopping to have that conversation with them so that I wouldn't regret not having that conversation with them. And so that, to me, that relentless pursuit of excellence, I saw that saying somewhere. Somebody was in relentless pursuit of something. And somewhere in my 20s, I saw somebody was in relentless pursuit of something. And I thought, I want to live in what do I want to live in relentless pursuit of? And so I determined I want to live in relentless pursuit of excellence. What is excellence to me? Excellence to me, by my own definition and how I determined to live, was to show up for people that I cared for, that still have boundaries for myself. Part of showing up for people I cared about was showing up for myself because I needed to take care of me. I can't serve from an empty tank. And I knew that intuitively. And from reading John Maxwell's books, but I wanted to show up for people and create experiences in moments with people so that when they left, I wanted them to feel better. I wanted them to leave feeling valued. I wanted them to feel like that was an experience that made them feel important. Not that they thought I was important. I wanted them to leave the experience where they felt important. Yes. And I just determined I wanted to live in relentless pursuit of excellence, even if it was inconvenient to me. And truthfully, Brian, you know this too, because I know you live in relentless pursuit of excellence. Usually, if you're going to live in relentless pursuit of excellence, it's when it's inconvenient. Those defining moments are when it's most inconvenient, when you have to choose publicly, but mostly privately. Am I going to do what I know I really ultimately deep down want to do, or am I going to do what serves me in my most lazy moment or my most, easy moment? Am I going to choose the easy, or am I going to choose what I feel I really am deeply called to do in this moment? And that's a hard thing to live by because it means denial of what you really kind of would like to just do in the moment. But ultimately, I can say now at 52, and my kids are grown, while I have asked their forgiveness for many things that I didn't do well, I can honestly look back and say, oh, I regret. I know I should have done that for her or for him. And sometimes it was like they were in college and they were in crisis and I had to be somewhere, and I canceled meetings and I canceled things and drove 3 hours to go see them in college because they were in a crisis. And I have no regrets about that because I know that they'll always know when I said, if you need me, I will be there for you. My job, I love what I do. I'm passionate about the people I do things for and with. But if you need me, it all gets laid down for you. And they didn't play that card very often, but they knew that when they were in crisis, they could say, Mom, I really need you. And I would go and I would be there. And that's something I don't want to say I'm proud of. That's something I can sign my name to, I'll say.
Absolutely. And I think that is something to be, if not, I mean, if you don't want to attach the label proud to it, at least acknowledge it and know that that's part of who you are and part of what you stand for. And you're right, that is part of the relentless pursuit of excellence is being there and in those moments, in those crisis situations that you talked about, and knowing that you're right where you need to be during those times. And sometimes we have 4 kids, so I understand what it's like to be running in 4 different directions or being pulled in a couple different directions. It doesn't always work out perfectly, and you've alluded to that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to give yourself some grace on that too. And I
absolutely,
I know that
absolutely
well equipped to do that. You mentioned being for people and having that be part of excellence for you. Traci, I know that people matter to you. And I saw that you even have described yourself as a relationship developer, which I thought was an interesting term. I know that you've benefited, like I've benefited, from having some pretty amazing people pour into you, both informally and in formal mentoring relationships. How did those relationships evolve? And what impact have those had on your life?
I'm going to first start and say I am, nobody can choose their family, and but I was blessed with a good family, not a perfect family. In fact, there's a lot of mess in my family. My grandparents and my aunts and uncles. I'm from a humongous family. From my mom's 2 parents, they had 9 children. From those 2 little grandparents and those 9 children, I think there's between all of my cousins and my aunts and uncles and all that, I think there's 170 of us and growing. There's so many. So the first thing I want to say of why relationships are important for me is my grandmother was her mom passed away when she was 3. And she was an only child. So she was raised by her dad, and her dad passed away when she was 16 or 17. And before he passed away, she was dating my grandfather, and he allowed him to marry her. And so they married when she was 16, and they were married for 72, just shy of 72 or just shy of 73. I always forget the year. But I wrote about it in my book, which we can talk about maybe in a little bit. But they to me, family was very important to her because she craved family because she lost her family so young. She always wanted brothers and sisters, so she had so many kids. And we all gathered at least once a year growing up because family was important to her, and she wanted all of her kids together and all of her grandkids together, and they all honored her by doing that. So first and foremost, my mentor was my family, in that I saw that you honor your family, you honor your mom, you honor the relationships in your family. Now, let me say, when we would gather, there was always, with those people, they are very strong personalities. There was always at least one humongous big family blowout between one of my mom's siblings. That was, the cousins would all gather to watch how it played out. And it was, messy and all that good stuff. But it was who we were. My parents were Slovenian. And so it was this big kind of fiery ball of love and messiness and honesty and just honoring each other, even as they fought with each other. And to me, that was the first level of that is what people are supposed to be. Show up for each other. Even when you can't get along, you still keep showing up for one another. And I just loved, and I can remember looking back, I have a very clear picture of my grandmother's face, how I loved her. And she would just kind of sit back and just take it all in. And you could just see her cup and her heart so full. And I just can remember, even as a little girl, seeing her see it all. And I just thought, that is what I want. That's how I want to feel about people. That's how I want to look at people. And so then growing up, I learned about John Maxwell when I was 21. My parents were wonderful too. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to skip a generation. They were wonderful. I have four brothers and sisters. There's 5 of us, and we're all really close, and we gather together, and we've continued that tradition. And that's why I wanted a big family. But when I found John, it was because I didn't finish college. I had just a semester of college, and I practically flunked that out. And so I knew that I wanted to pick my own mentor. And so when I started learning from John, I thought I was going to learn about business things and whatever that meant. And I thought, and instead what I learned was John was like a relationship genius. And he was all about teaching you how to next level. Like what I saw my grandmother's face, John lived out to the nth degree. And I thought that called out something deep within me. And that has been really what I've worked toward. And I attribute a lot of my, if not all of my success in business to just learning to really connect with, love, serve, care about, and develop people and help them develop their relationships, because the better they develop their relationships, the better they do in their marriages, in their families, and in their businesses. And so I thought, helping people develop their relationships, that's what John did for me. And I want to do that for other people.
Well, and if we do that effectively, the rest takes care of itself.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned your book and sort of casually said, maybe we'll talk about it. Of course, We're going to talk about your book. And I want to jump into that right now. Traci, you wrote that early in your marriage, and you have so much wonderful context in your family. And obviously, because you're a people person, you've been around lots and lots of other people outside your family, too. And so you certainly have knowledge and expertise to be able to write the book that you wrote. But you wrote that early in your marriage, you never imagined yourself someday writing a book about marriage. And yet, as with other areas of your life, you've been deeply committed to not only surviving that messy, complicated relationship, as you put it, with your husband, Casey, but to creating a thriving, loving marriage that will last a lifetime.
Yeah.
What caused you to want to share what's worked for you and the experiences that you've witnessed in other people and seen within your family and others around you in a book about marriage?
Well, I've kind of almost shown the pattern of how my brain works in just the little time we've talked. Like, I wanted to get healthy because I needed to lose weight, and I found something, and I found out the process, that it wasn't like, oh, there's a path forward. And so what did I want to immediately do? Show someone else how to do it. And then when I found from John how to next level relationships and how that affects every aspect of your life, the next thing I wanted to do was help other people find out how to do that. And so as Casey and I figured out and found our way, I think the next thought was like, this should not be kept to us. This should be shared with people, because we were 2 people who came from 2 very different backgrounds. I talk about it in the book. What's funny is my husband we're on vacation, and he just had a call with his friend who is also his boss, and he said, "Tell Traci I'm reading the book." And he said, "Oh, is that right?" And he said, "Boy, you guys are really putting it all out there, aren't you?"
That's true.
And I said, "Oh my gosh, did you feel so uncomfortable?" And he said, "No, because we are putting it all out there." Because the reality is, I tell a bunch about just our immature moments, our growth moments, our arguments, and how it went, because we were so different. We came from such different backgrounds. But we loved each other. And I think there were definitely times where we could have given up because it was just hard. We were kind of like this. And I don't think I ever really thought like, I'm out of here. I don't think I ever thought that. I just knew like there has to be a way. There has to be, we're not figuring something out. There's got to be a tool. There's got to be something. But when I found books, I did find tools, like a little something in this book and a little something here. I never picked up a book that went like, this book gets me. necessarily. It was just a bunch of little pieces along the way. Most of the books that I read, particularly faith-based books that I was reading, sounded so perfect. Like the people in it were messy and we were messy. And I would have loved to have picked up a book where someone talked about how they were immature, like really immature, and it worked out clunky, but it still worked out. And so that's why I determined, like, I am going to tell how it works out clunky and you move forward a little bit, and you just keep taking steps forward, and it gets less and less clunky, and then it's smooth. And because that's real. That's how it was real for us. And maybe some people will read our book and say, man, we get along it's way easier for us than it was for Casey and Traci. And for that, I say, that's amazing. But for me, I just want people to find that there is a path forward. When you say I do, I mean, there's a lot of divorce in this country, but there's also, I think it's like 1.2 marriages in the US in 2021 and like 650,000 divorces. So not quite half as many divorces as there are weddings. And, you even see like celebrities and all these celebrity ball players and all this stuff. They keep getting married again and again. Look at Elizabeth Taylor, for anybody who's old enough to remember her. She was an actress who married 8 times. One guy, I think she married 2 times or maybe 3. But it's like they keep getting married because there's something people are craving in a lifelong marriage, in a lifelong relationship. And they keep getting to the end, and it's like, okay, this is hard. I'll start over again. But a lot of times the problem that you're bringing into the next relationship is yourself. You're the one, you aren't getting past yourself within that one relationship, and you keep hoping someone else is going to fix it, but it's you. And so these tools are really like self-reflective. They are practicing with the same person over and over again, the person you chose, and it's moving forward little steps at a time and really creating the marriage that you desire. And Casey and I have said so many times, gosh, if we had ever given up, what we would miss. We would be missing out on this, and we might have, let's just suppose, even if we divorced and married somebody else, we wouldn't have this long, rich history of trying and figuring it out and forgiving each other and figuring out it again and growing up within the marriage. And that's something worth sharing, because if somebody does have a desire in their heart, if you want to get a divorce and you want to try again, that is the individual's decision. But if you desire to have a marriage for life, shouldn't somebody who's figured it out through the mess show you how to navigate that rough terrain? That's my heart for that.
Yeah. Well, and you've hit on one of the challenges that we're facing in society today, is that we seem to be exposed to more dysfunction in marriage rather than models of loving, successful marriages. And the other thing that I've noticed happening with young people, and you have teenagers, but you also have kids in your 20s and at least a couple who are married, I think.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've noticed with young people is, because of that trend, the dysfunction in marriage, the obvious rate of divorce and kids growing up with in single parent households and that sort of thing, that young people today are often hesitant to commit to marriage.
Right.
How do you see that playing out long term if the trend continues, and what can we do to turn that tide in the other direction? I know your book is like, if we could just get your book into the hands of all teenagers, or before you date, you have to read Real Life Marriage, and that would be very helpful. But seriously, it's a huge problem, and it's one that is very concerning for me.
Yeah. So I'll say first, I think there are 3 audiences for this book. This book is for people who are married already. You could be married 20 years and stuck. And like, are we going to keep going with this? Because it's not working. Or you could be married 5 years or 2 years, any amount of years or months or days, and be like, okay, we want tools. We need some tools. And that this book is for you, because those tools are in there, will help any married couple who wants to work on it. This is for somebody who is not engaged or married. This is somebody who is seriously dating and is trying to decide, is this the person I want to marry? Because there are action steps at the end of every chapter that you are to do kind of with your person, and it gets conversation going and talking. And so in those conversations, Casey and I have done marriage prep classes at our church, and we've also done marriage mentoring for people who are married and they just wanted some mentoring. They're stuck on something. And so we've met with couples who have asked us to mentor them. And what we found is, we've mentored couples who before they were even engaged or when they were engaged. So before you're engaged and you're deciding if you're going to get engaged, is this the person? I'm not sure. This helps you. I believe this language will help you kind of discover, do we want to take this next step? Are we on the same path? Do we want the same things? Do we have the same vision for marriage that we want to take that next step? And then this book is for people who are engaged, who want to start out on the right step and talk about all the things before you get married. Setting expectations at the beginning is one of the best things you can do for your marriage, to talk about all the things. A lot of times, this is a John Maxwell thing, but he'll say, like, disappointment is that gap between where expectations don't meet reality, and disappointment lives in there. And so let's talk about expectations. A lot of times, many times, we have an expectation about lots of things, but marriage in particular on this topic, that what we think marriage should be, what it's going to be like, what we want out of marriage, whether that means, I hope we move every few years and try different places, versus I want to live in the house my parents passed down to us, and I hope we live there and pass it down to our children. Those are two they don't seem like it's a big deal, but that's kind of a big thing to talk about, because if you're somebody who wants to live in many different states or even different countries, that's something to talk about before marriage. And so getting those conversations going in these activities in the book at the end of each chapter is a good thing for engaged couples to be talking about, so you can make some decisions in advance of your marriage. So getting back to the question that you talked about, we did see that in our marriage prep classes. What about people who are putting it off because you've not seen marriage done well, so you're afraid to pull the trigger and get married because they don't want a divorce. They want to do something different than what their parents did, or they don't want to have to go through the pain or put that pain that they experienced as kids of divorce on their own kids. We've heard that loud and clear from kids. And so, not kids, people who are in their 20s, creeping up on their 30s, in their low 30s, getting to their mid 30s, not getting married because they are afraid of that. And so they do all the things, but get married. And then a lot of times those couples break up, to be totally honest, because without the commitment, a lot of times, if Casey and I were in a lot of those situations that we were in, but we weren't married, it would have been different. We might not have had the same thing that we were working together to create a marriage and a family as a married couple moving forward. That commitment was important to both of us. That commitment said, I'm all in, and I'm continuing to make the same promise that I made on day one, standing at the altar, that in the dress or before the judge, whatever it was where you made your promise, we want to continue to make that promise every day moving forward. And so that promise is just saying, I'm committing to you. I'm in. I'm committing to you, the good, the bad, the ugly, and it's going to be all. And I know that. And I'm in. And so now what they're saying is, they don't have, I think the root of what we've heard is, they just don't know how to make it work. And that's what this book is. It's like, this can help you. It isn't that I'm the greatest author in the world. I'm just saying, I've found tools that can help people who have a hard time, or who have a not so hard time, navigate the uncharted territory of marriage, of creating a unique marriage, your own marriage, because every single marriage is different. So if you haven't seen a marriage last, this book can help you. This is me as your older sister, your aunt, a mother figure, saying, hey, this is how we worked it out. This is how you can work it out. And so I think sometimes those people put it off because they want to make it work, but they just don't know how. And so these tools, you can feel safe stepping forward knowing, hey, we now have the tools And it's not like you're going to need advanced tools. Like Real Life Marriage 2.0 isn't going to come out because you're going to need your next set of tools. These are the same tools at 30, almost 32 years of marriage we are still using today because they last for a lifetime.
I've always thought it is interesting, and so I love people, and I love to observe and study people, and I'm a learner, and constantly learning and growing in every area of life. And I've always found it interesting that we read and attend seminars and get coaches and mentors in so many areas. Like we can read a book on how to fix a car, or we can read a book about how to grow a business or how to start a business. And we can read books about fitness, and we can read books about superfoods or how to be healthier. And yet, not many people are reading books about marriage, and so it's no wonder the challenges that we have as a society with marriage, the dysfunction that we have around marriage. The good news is that there are tools out there, tools like your book. There are many other books, and
Yes.
I've had the same experience that there haven't been books. There isn't a marriage manual, just like there isn't a life manual. I wish there was. There isn't a parenting manual, and it seems to me that maybe that's your next book, because you do
it's
have
in the works.
a considerable amount of experience as a parent, and I know you would have wonderful wisdom and insight to share with parents of all ages. And so that's another opportunity. But there are tools out there that people can avail themselves of that will help them in their marriage and help them in their relationships. And I just wish more. I hope people listening to this podcast and watching the show on YouTube will go out and get your book and get other books as well. Because for me, one of the reasons that our marriage has been successful, and we're going on 33 years, so we're right around the same amount of time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And to the extent that I've been able to contribute to that, it's really just like I do in every other area of life, finding people who are successful and find out what they're doing that makes them successful. So whether, again, it's fitness or health or business or spiritual growth or whatever area of life, relationships, and certainly marriage, it's helpful to know what works for people. And by the way, it's also important to see dysfunction and see things not working and see tension, because we can learn and grow from that too. Right. So if we see somebody who's unhealthy, we can observe their behavior, and we just want to, like, if we just do the complete opposite. I tell our kids that if you don't know how to do something, just do the opposite of what everybody else is doing, and that's probably a pretty good place to start. And then you can go from there. Isn't that true, though?
It's true.
So we can learn from both, but I don't. It's a little baffling to me. I'm curious about why people are so eager and so apt to learn about things in every other area other than relationships. Relationships are difficult. Marriage is difficult.
I agree.
It's ups and downs. It's messy. It's real life. I love I'm looking at the cover of your book right now, which is the bottom rack of a dishwasher, and the dishes are messy. There's ketchup all over one, and there's mustard all over another plate. And it's not the fine china set up with the beautiful crystal, right? It's the messiness that you have on your cover. But the good news is that there are tools available to help us navigate through that. There are people who can help us navigate through that, whether it's just somebody. My wife and I used to double date with a couple, and they were in their mid 80s when we started going out with them, and they were in their early 90s and they're both deceased now. But it was just some of the most wonderful, rich time and conversation that we could have invested. And I miss them dearly. Leo and Fran were their names, and this tiny little Jewish couple, and they had been married over 60 years.
Wow.
And they used to, they would lament about challenges going on with their kids. And we had a couple of those conversations. And then I thought, wait a minute, their kids are in their 60s and 70s, and they're still talking about parenting challenges. But they just poured wisdom and insight into us. And so there are people all around us who are wonderful models of successful marriage. Books do that, right? Books in any area give us the opportunity to read wisdom and gain tools and knowledge and strategies for improving. And marriage, as you know, is just one of the absolute most important relationships in life.
Yeah. I want to say too, if you go to my website, tracimorrow.com, on one of the drop-down menus, I list books that were impactful for us that we recommend to other couples. So they're in the area of like money management and finding out your money personalities. And so eventually I'm going to, hopefully by the end of 2022, so depending on when you see this, if you go there, it might be there or it might not yet, but having an online course that we've done live with couples in groups. But those books are a part of it. So it's like your money personality, your personality and how you view things, your love languages, how you receive love, how you show love back and forth with one another. It talks about, there's a great book on there's a Dave Ramsey book. There's a book on sex, which I feel like is a big topic, especially in the church, where I feel like we had a marriage prep class where I don't know how many people really get great mentoring about sexual intimacy. I'm not talking about the act of sex. I'm talking about sexual intimacy. Andy Stanley has a book called Love, Sex, and Dating, which I've given to all of my kids, and whether they're teenagers or 20-somethings. And the idea behind it, if you've got a kid who is not married, that is an incredible book to give to them. I think it's even for somebody probably maybe as young as 15, maybe 14. Read it first to determine if you think it's ready for your kid yet. But that's a great book because he talks about like you are sexually compatible with pretty much everybody. But sexual intimacy is the same thing as relationship. It's being intimate with someone. It's about a connection, not just an act. And so I feel like that is a piece that is also how many kids and young people are trained about that area of their relationship by movies or TV, which is just so bogus. And so there's a lot of misconceptions around that it's just not talked about. In the church, you're told what not to do. And then once you're married, it's not really talked about at all, other than don't have an affair. So talking about that, there are great authors. Cliff and Joyce Penner are inside. If you're a church-going person, that book, to me, they have many, many books. They were the actual mentors. They were the ones who came in and taught the classes for Casey and I. But they have so many books. That's the value of being in LA, because so many of those authors and people. But there are so many topics that are so rich. And I put some of those books up for you on my website. So if you would like to look at some of those books, go ahead and look. And I think there's even links directly to them on Amazon. So if you're, like Brian said, there are a lot of different books. Those are the ones that I would recommend to start with, in addition to my book. But those are ones like that you can cherry pick topics. If you feel like you're really, as you're reading through my book, you can go, oh, that would be a good one to kind of dive deep into on the different topics.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Traci, you and Casey have 6 children and now a grandson too. What are the most important lessons about marriage you want each of your children and eventually your grandchildren to know?
I think open communication is a big one, and being a part of having mentors So open communication with one another where they can talk about what they saw. I want them to talk about what they saw in their marriage, their parents' marriage growing up, each of their parents' marriages growing up, and then talk about what they want to bring into their own marriage moving forward for their own legacy. And then keeping the sanctity and the privacy of their marriage, putting a boundary up around themselves. That's one of the a dear friend of mine married our oldest daughter. She's our second born, but our oldest daughter was our first to get married. And he had each of the parents read a blessing out loud as part of the marriage ceremony, which was in effect us cutting the strings, like basically releasing and stepping back from the new couple. And one of the things that I said was like, don't let anyone inside that innermost private conversation. Like don't complain about one another to other people. Don't let the mothers or the fathers of either side in too tight. You're creating something that's very special and unique to keep between the two of you. I'm not saying you can't have mentorship. They have asked us many things and allowed us to come in, but keeping a healthy boundary around the couple is so important that you don't even let your children in. Like the kid, that when the healthiest families are when the husband and the wife have a really healthy boundary around the mom and the dad, and then the kids operate so much more healthy. When this is broken down, when the parents are broken down, and the mom is more connected to the children, and the dad's feeling left out, he's more at work or he's more doing stuff with his buddies, then there starts to be a breakdown. So for my biggest advice that I've given to my kids is like, really put a healthy boundary around the two of you that dad and I don't go into, that the other person's parents don't go into, that not even your kids go into. That's you guys and your faith, and absolutely get counseling or input, but you have one another's back, and that's how you become each other's person, is by every day choosing to have one another's back and keeping that privacy and that intimacy between the two of you. That alone changes the whole health of the family. The temptation as the mom is it's very easy to get all the things you need from this precious little baby as you bring a baby into the family. And it's very easy, this guy who suddenly the dad suddenly is like not as cute and cuddly as that baby. And so you're getting all your physical touch and your kisses and your loves and words of affirmation and all the love languages and ways you receive love from this precious little baby. And you suddenly aren't as needy to your spouse. So when you keep the boundary up of course you love your child, but when you make sure that you are making time to date your spouse and spend time with your spouse and cultivating that relationship above all, that is where you keep growing together. Yes, you are going to expect to grow apart and in different directions at different paces and different interests. That is two different people growing, but making intentional choices to continue to grow back toward one another, even as you are growing in all those different spaces, so that as you grow to the next best version of yourselves, you're continuing to stay connected. And as you do that, your marriage is so much richer and has a depth of growing together. I also say, like, every argument that you have that you settle is like, it's like an oak tree. And I use the illustration in the book. Oak tree has a vast root system that goes far and wide and fairly shallow. There are a few really deep, a couple, 2, 3 really deep roots. But the main root system of an oak tree is pretty shallow and far and wide, farther than about the width or even farther than the branches. And they reach out pretty wide of an oak tree. And so I always think of like every argument that you have, a little oak tree is tiny, small, and the spindly little root system goes down. But very quickly, it starts multiplying and knotting and going, like twisting around each other underneath to prepare to support the branches as it gets bigger when a storm comes. And I think that is such a great analogy of marriage, because with every argument, with everything you overcome, every hardship that you go through together, every time you grow apart and stitch back together and grow to the next stage in your marriage, you are interlocking and intertwining your lives together and building a pretty radical root system that is going to support you when hardship comes. And so every time I like to say, like, remember, you're building a mighty oak with every argument and every hardship that you overcome. That's your root system that's going to support you when hard times come and try to knock you down.
I love that, Traci. That the oak tree is just such a wonderful visual for marriage. And it's the last few minutes, I want to go back and listen to that almost immediately. And so if you're listening to the podcast or again, watching this show on YouTube, just rewind and listen to that, the last 5 minutes, because that's really rich. And I appreciate you sharing that. Traci, you're an entrepreneur, author, podcaster, speaker, coach, wife, mom of 6 kids, and a grandma. How do you do all that you do and still make time for everyone and everything that's important to you?
Prioritize. I prioritize. I know what's important to me, and I've learned to say no. When I was about 35, I was getting pretty run down, and because I wanted to do all things and be a part of all things, and I was just, my margin, if you were to picture my life as a piece of paper, my margin was minuscule. And I can just remember at one point Casey saying to me, like, I need more margin. I think we need more margin. You're going to run yourself into the ground. And so I started intentionally saying no. I had 2 or 3 people who would ask, I gave them permission to ask me how often I was saying no. So I determined what were my priorities. And then from those priorities, I remember John Maxwell used to say, I do 3 things really well. The rest I get someone else to do. And that really said to me, okay, as a mom, I have to do more than 3 things. But what are the things that I absolutely need to prioritize that are my heart and soul, my passion, my purpose? And what do I not need to give my time and energy to? And so I am a pretty high energy person, and I do like to do a lot of things, but learning to say no was very important. Having people ask me, am I saying no? Giving Casey the permission to say to me, hey, I think your margins are getting a little small again. That's the trigger to me to go, oh, I just naturally want to just keep trying it all. So I pare it back and go back to my priorities and really live within those priorities on my calendar. And the rest I just have to say no to, so that I actually do schedule in rest. Because it sounds so crazy when you say all those things that I do, but they aren't all at once. They aren't all at the same time. And I also, my kids all have, 4 of my kids are adults and outside of the home, and they all have their lives now. So we do make time for one another, but it's also they understand, and I understand that they have their life, and I have things that I'm doing too. That, hey, when can we FaceTime? When can we talk? We schedule time for one another, but definitely we get it on the calendar, and then we schedule in space, and then to the rest we say no.
That's awesome. Traci, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I feel like we could talk for another 2, 3, 5 hours or days probably. But,
That's right.
I'm so grateful for your friendship, and I really appreciate the wisdom that you've imparted today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel the same. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I do. I value your friendship. I appreciate you having me on. And I'm so grateful for every person who's listening. I just pray that this was a blessing for you, and that in somewhere in here, there's some nugget that you needed to hear today that you get to take home and feel the freedom either to take care of your body or reclaim some relationships or priorities, and that you walk away invigorated and excited to take back the reins.
Thanks again, Traci, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Thanks, Brian.
And for our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Go online today, and I'm just going to say pick up 2 copies of Traci's book, Real Life Marriage. One for you and your spouse or significant other, or somebody you'd like to be your significant other, and one to help someone else improve their marriage. Please also be sure to support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with Traci Morrow on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can also learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.